She was just a waitress until one night. She touched the piano and silenced a room full of billionaires. Now the whole world can't stop listening. Emily stood behind the counter of the fancy restaurant, holding a tray with empty wine glasses. Her back ached, her feet were sore, and her white shirt had a small coffee stain she had tried to hide with her apron. It was nearly midnight, and the dinner crowd had thinned. But there were still a few wealthy customers sipping expensive wine and laughing loudly, as if the world belonged to them. Emily stayed quiet, always polite, always invisible. That's how she liked it now. The less people noticed her, the better. She wasn't always like this. A few years ago, Emily was full of dreams. She had won a scholarship to one of the best music schools in the country. People used to say she had magic in her fingers when she played the piano. Her dream was simple: to perform on big stages, to make people feel something real with her music. Her mother used to say that when Emily played, the whole house stopped to listen. But life doesn't always go the way we plan. Her father died suddenly in a car accident, just 6 months after she joined the academy. Everything changed. Her mother couldn't afford rent without him. Her little brother Jamie, who was only 7 at the time, needed someone to take care of him. So, Emily left the academy, came home, and started working whatever jobs she could find. She didn't complain. She just did what she had to do. Now she worked at La Bellezza, one of the fanciest restaurants in the city, the kind of place where steaks cost more than her weekly groceries. The staff wore crisp uniforms, and every table had candles and shiny silverware. Emily had worked there for nearly 2 years, and in that time, no one ever guessed she was once a piano prodigy. To them, she was just another waitress. But sometimes, late at night, when the restaurant was quiet and almost everyone had gone, Emily would walk over to the corner of the dining room where an old black piano stood. It was mostly decoration. Rich people liked the look of it, but it still worked. She would gently press a few keys, making sure no one heard. She'd close her eyes and let her fingers remember the songs her heart still knew, even though she hadn't practiced in years. The music came back like it had been waiting for her. She always made sure to stop before the cleaners came in. If anyone ever found out, she'd be embarrassed. She didn't want to answer questions, didn't want sympathy. This part of her life was buried. It had to be. On one quiet Tuesday evening, Emily was clearing plates from a large party that had just left when she saw the piano again. It called to her in a way she couldn't explain. She looked around. The manager was busy with the wine list. The head chef had gone out for a smoke. The guests were too busy talking about stock prices and luxury vacations. Slowly, quietly, she walked over and sat on the small piano stool. She looked at the keys, half expecting them to scold her for staying away so long. She played a simple tune, a soft melody that she remembered from her first year of training. Her fingers were a little stiff, and some of the notes came out uneven, but still, the song had magic. For a few minutes, Emily wasn't a tired waitress. She was the girl who had once dreamed big, who believed her music could touch hearts. Suddenly, a sharp voice broke the moment. "Hey, what do you think you're doing?" Emily jumped and quickly stood up. It was the assistant manager, Mr. Lee, frowning with a notepad in his hand. "This isn't a playground. Get back to work." "I'm sorry," Emily said, lowering her head. She walked away quickly, cheeks burning. The piano stayed silent once more. Later that night, while walking home, Emily passed a street performer playing violin near the bus station. People tossed coins in his case. Some stopped to record him. Emily watched quietly for a moment, then kept walking. She used to believe music could change her life. No, it was just something from another lifetime. At home, she opened the door. Quietly. Her brother was asleep on the couch, school books spread across the table. Emily smiled sadly. He had always been smart, always trying to help her, even though he was still just a child. She covered him with a blanket and went to her room. The walls were thin, the floor creaked, but it was home. As she lay in bed, her mind replayed the feel of the piano keys under her fingers. Just for a moment, she had felt alive again. Not invisible, not exhausted, just herself. She wondered if music had truly left her, or if it was still somewhere deep inside, waiting. But then the alarm clock buzzed, reminding her that tomorrow was another long day of trays, orders, and rich guests who wouldn't even remember her name. The next day, she arrived at the restaurant early. There was a new event listed on the schedule, a private birthday party for someone named Mr. Crawford. All the staff were told to be extra careful, extra polite. Mr. Crawford was a very important customer, one of the richest men in the city. Emily didn't care much for rich people, but she needed the job, so she just nodded. When the guests arrived that night, the restaurant turned into a shining palace of laughter, perfume, and expensive jewelry. Men in suits and women in glittering dresses filled the long table near the piano. Waiters moved quickly, pouring wine, bringing out dishes like duck confit and lobster risotto. Emily stayed busy, focused. Staying out of sight like always, she carried trays to the kitchen and back, listening to conversations about yachts and vacations in Paris. To these people, her world didn't exist. She was just someone who refilled their water. But little did she know, her quiet life was about to change forever. One of the guests, a loud man with a red face and gold watch, was Mr. Crawford. He noticed her when she came to clear plates near his end of the table. She didn't look at him, but he looked at her. "Hey," he said loudly, waving his fork. "You? What's your name?" Emily froze. "Emily, sir." "Emily," he said, laughing. "You've been humming all evening. You've got a song? Stuck in your head or something?" I wasn't aware I was humming," she said quietly, trying not to make eye contact. "Oh, don't be shy," he said, smiling in a way that made the hairs on her neck rise. "Do you know how to play that thing?" He pointed to the piano. Everyone at the table turned to look at her. A few chuckled. Emily's throat felt dry. A little, "I used to." Mr. Crawford clapped his hands. "Well then, give us a tune. Come on, it's my birthday. I want to be entertained." The other guests laughed and nodded. One even said, "Let's see what the waitress can do." Emily wanted to disappear. She shook her head. "I'm really not comfortable." The restaurant manager stepped forward, fake smile plastered on his face. "Emily, just play something simple. It'll be fun." "Go ahead." Emily looked at the piano. It suddenly felt like a trap. She walked slowly toward it, her legs heavy. The room quieted. She could feel their eyes on her, waiting for her to mess up, expecting her to be bad, expecting her to make a fool of herself. She sat down. Her fingers hovered over the keys. Her heart pounded. Everything inside her told her to run. But somewhere deep inside her the music still lived. A small voice whispered. So she took a breath and let her fingers touch the keys. What happened next would change everything. Emily's fingers rested gently on the piano keys, and for a moment, she felt like a small child again, scared, nervous, unsure of what would happen next. The room was full of rich people watching her, not because they cared about the music, but because they expected a show, maybe even a joke. They didn't see her as someone with talent. They saw a poor waitress being forced to perform like a circus act. Some guests were already whispering and giggling, waiting to laugh at her mistakes. Emily could feel their eyes like hot lights. Pressing against her skin, Mr. Crawford leaned back in his chair with a smug smile on his face, clearly enjoying the power he held over her. He twirled his wine glass and said loudly, "Come on now, we don't have all night. Let's hear what you've got, piano girl." Emily looked up, her eyes catching a glimpse of her manager near the kitchen entrance. He gave her a quick nod as if to say, "Just get it over with." She didn't want to play. Her hands were shaking and her stomach was tight with fear. But deep inside, something had started to rise, a mixture of anger, sadness, and something else she hadn't felt in years. Pride. She closed her eyes and took a deep breath. Her hands moved slowly across the keys as she started with a soft, familiar melody, one she used to play during her very first piano lessons. The notes came out shaky. At first, a few people in the crowd exchanged amused looks as if to say, "Here we go, just as bad as we thought." But then, something changed. Emily's fingers, though out of practice, began to remember. The music inside her was not gone. It had just been quiet, waiting. Her hands moved faster, steadier, shaping the melody into something rich and full. She transitioned smoothly into Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata, a piece she had loved as a teenager. The soft, flowing rhythm filled the restaurant like a whisper in a storm. The laughter stopped. The whispers faded. At first, no one moved. The guests sat still, confused by what they were hearing. This wasn't some silly song. This was real music, beautiful, haunting, and filled with emotion. As Emily played, her body relaxed, her heart opened, and everything around her disappeared. She didn't see the tables, the faces, or the lights. All she felt was the music pouring out of her like water from a broken dam. Not just a performance. It was a memory, a cry, a story told through her fingertips. Mr. Crawford blinked. His arrogant smile slowly faded. The people at the table leaned in closer, completely silent now. A woman covered her mouth with her hand, tears filling her eyes. Another guest gently set down his wine glass, afraid to make a sound that would ruin the moment. Even the waiters in the background stopped moving, frozen by the music that flowed from the piano. Emily played with everything she had inside her, her broken dreams. Her long nights, the pain of losing her father, the fear of never being seen, for who she really was. Each note was heavy with meaning, and yet light as air. Time seemed to stop. When the last note finally faded into the silence, the restaurant remained still. No one spoke, no one clapped right away. It was as if the entire room had forgotten how to breathe. Then, someone began to clap slowly, gently. Another followed, and then another. Soon, the whole room exploded in applause. Some guests stood up, cheering. Others looked around in disbelief. Even the manager, who had been nervous about the whole thing, smiled wide with pride. Emily sat. They're overwhelmed, her hands still resting on the keys. I had no idea what to do. She had not played for applause. She had played for herself. Mr. Crawford, who had started the whole thing as a joke, looked uncomfortable now. His face was slightly red, his drink untouched. People around him were praising Emily, asking who she was, where she trained, how such talent could be hidden in plain sight. One guest even asked if she had performed at Carnegie Hall. Crawford cleared his throat and gave a half-hearted chuckle, trying to act as if he had known all along that she was talented. But it was clear his joke had backfired. Emily stood up slowly, unsure of what to say. She gave a small bow, her cheeks warm with both pride and embarrassment. She quickly walked back toward the kitchen, her hands still tingling from the keys. Behind the kitchen door, she leaned against the wall and let out a deep breath. Her heart was racing, but not from fear this time. It was from something else. Joy. She felt alive in a way she hadn't in years. The other staff looked at her in shock. One of the younger waiters, who had always teased her gently, whispered, "That was amazing." Even the head chef gave her a respectful nod. Emily didn't stay long. She finished her shift quietly, went home without saying much. Her mind was still spinning. What had just happened? She had gone from feeling like a servant to receiving a standing ovation from the city's richest people, all because of a piano. The next morning, Emily woke up to a surprise. Her phone was buzzing nonstop. Messages, missed calls, emails, dozens of them. At first, she thought something was wrong. But then she opened a message from a coworker, a video. Someone had recorded her performance. The video showed her sitting at the piano, the crowd watching, the music flowing, the silence growing. It ended with the applause and her shy little bow. The person who posted it had written, "Waitress silences billionaires with Beethoven, pure talent." The video had already gone viral, thousands of likes, shares, and comments. People from all over the world were talking about her. Who is she? She's incredible. This made me cry. She deserves to be on a real stage. Even celebrities were sharing it. Musicians, journalists, and music schools were reaching out. Emily's simple life had been turned upside down overnight. Her small act of bravery had opened a door she never expected. But deep down, Emily was unsure what to do. Was this just a passing moment, or the beginning of something new? Could she trust it? Could she really return to the dream she gave up years ago? All she knew was that the music inside her had not died. It had just been waiting for the right moment to come back. And now, the world had heard it too. She sat on the edge of her bed, her phone in her hand, still trying to understand how her life had changed in just one night. Her brother Jamie came in, rubbing his eyes, asking why her phone kept making so much noise. She smiled and hugged him tight. For the first time in years, Emily felt something new. Hope. And she had a feeling the best was yet to come. The morning sun gently lit up Emily's small bedroom, casting a soft glow on the walls. But she wasn't asleep. She had barely slept at all. Her phone had buzzed through the night, and every time she picked it up there was another message, another comment, another email. The video of her playing the piano had spread faster than wildfire. People from all over the world were watching it, and they weren't just watching, they were feeling it. They were connecting with her. Her hands trembled as she scrolled through. The messages. Some were from people saying she reminded them of a loved one who played piano. Some said the performance had made them cry. One person had written, "I don't know you, but your music just made my heart feel something it hasn't felt in years."
Oh, it is.
Another said, "How is a waitress not already on the biggest stages in the world?" Emily didn't know how to respond. She didn't even know how to feel. Just days ago, she was invisible. Now, she was everywhere. In the kitchen, her little brother Jamie was pouring cereal. Yawning, unaware of how big everything had become. Emily joined him, pretending things were normal, but inside, her mind was spinning. When he saw her face glowing, with both fear and excitement, he asked, "Did something happen?" She smiled and said, "Maybe. I think the world just found out I can play the piano." Jamie's eyes lit up. "Seriously, you're famous." She laughed softly, kind of, cheered, and threw his arms around her. "I told you. I always told you you're the best." Later that day, she got a call from the restaurant. Her manager, who usually talked to her in a bored tone, sounded strange polite, even nervous. "Emily," he said. "We're getting flooded with calls asking. About you, reporters, TV stations, even some music companies. One man said he's from the New York Philharmonic or something." Emily's heart skipped a beat. "What should I do?" "I don't know," he admitted. "Da-da-da-da-da-da-da, but maybe you should take a few days off and think about it. We'll hold your job. Don't worry." She hung up the call and sat in silence. She didn't know what to do next. Her old piano teacher from the academy, Mrs. Benson, had left her a message too. It was the first time they'd spoken in years. "Emily," the message said, "I cried watching you play. I knew you had something special. If you're ready, I can help you again." For a moment, Emily felt everything: grief, joy, fear, and hope all tangled together. She remembered the day she had to leave music school. She remembered hugging Mrs. Benson goodbye and promising she'd come back one day. At the time, she hadn't believed it, but now, maybe that day had come. She opened her email and saw one. Message that stood out was from a famous music producer named Charles Langford. She had heard of him before. He had worked with top classical musicians and organized concerts across the world. The subject line read, "Emily, let's talk. You're not just a waitress, you're a star." Her fingers hesitated over the keyboard before opening the message. It was kind and respectful. He wrote about how powerful her performance was, how much feeling she had poured into the song, and how the world needed more musicians like her. At the end, he invited her to perform at a special concert 2 weeks later, a live charity event that would be aired on national television. Called it A Night of Second Chances. Emily stared at the screen, her breath shallow. It felt like a dream, but it was real. She had a chance to return to the world she thought she had lost forever, but her joy was quickly mixed with doubt. Who would take care of Jamie if she started practicing full-time again? What if she failed in front of millions of people? What if the video had created expectations she couldn't live up to? She needed time to think. That evening, she sat on a bench in the park, watching people walk by. Families, couples, children, playing knit, all felt so normal. She had spent so long hiding her talent that she wasn't sure who she was. Out the tray in her hand or the apron on her waist. A soft breeze passed through the trees, and she closed her eyes. Music floated through her memory. She remembered the first time she touched a piano at age 5. Her father had taken her to a music store, and while he was talking to the clerk, she had wandered over to a small, upright piano. She hit a few keys, and something inside her had awakened. That was the beginning. That was when everything had started. Her father had always believed in her. He used to say, "Emily, your music is like magic. It makes people stop and listen." Tears rolled down her cheeks as she whispered, "Dad, what should I do?" That night, back at home, she played an old melody on a second-hand keyboard. She kept under her bed. Jamie lay nearby, eyes closed, listening. When she finished, he opened his eyes and said, "You should do it." "Do what?" she asked. "The concert. Everything. You've given up so much for me already. But I'm not a baby anymore. I want to see you shine, Em." Her throat tightened. "But who'll take care of you? What if I fail?" "You won't," he said. "You already won. Showed the world who you are. Now show them again."
I haven't yet.
Next morning, Emily sent an email back to Charles Langford. It simply read, "Yes, I'm ready." Within hours, everything began to move fast. She was booked for interviews, meetings with the concert organizers, and rehearsals with professional musicians. Charles arranged for her to use a private studio, and even hired someone to help care for Jamie during the evenings. Emily felt nervous, but excited. It was like stepping into a dream where every corner felt both familiar and new. She walked into the studio the first day wearing old jeans and a sweater, unsure of what people expected of her. But the musicians greeted her warmly. Some had seen her video. They treated her not as a waitress, but as an artist. It gave her strength. As she sat at the grand piano in the center of the room, her hands hovered over the keys again, but this time there was no fear. She began to play. And just like before, the room fell silent. Even among professionals, her raw emotion, her connection to every note, made her stand out. She didn't play like someone who had trained perfectly. She played like someone who had lived. Charles, watching from a corner, smiled proudly. "You don't just play music," he told her. "You tell stories with it." She practiced every day for hours. Her fingers became stronger. Her confidence returned. Each song she played was chosen carefully, not just for skill, but for feeling. She wanted her performance at the concert to mean something. Meanwhile, the video continued to grow online. People began calling her the piano waitress. Fan pages appeared. A little girl from Japan sent her a drawing of a waitress playing piano under the stars. Emily cried when she saw it. She realized people weren't just supporting her. They were inspired by her, but not everyone was kind. There were a few critics who said she was only famous because of a lucky video. That real musicians trained for years and she was just a temporary trend. Emily saw the comments, and for a moment, they stung. But then she remembered something her teacher once told her. The only thing stronger than skill is soul. You have both. The night before the concert, Emily sat with Jamie at the edge of their small bed. He looked at her and asked, "Are you scared?" She nodded. "A little, but you're going to do it anyway." She smiled. "Yes. Good," he whispered, "because I want the world to see what I've always seen." That night, Emily barely slept, but she didn't need rest. She needed belief. And this time, she had it. She had no idea what tomorrow would bring. She knew one thing for sure. She was no longer just a waitress. She was ready to become what she was always meant to be. The big day had finally come. Emily stood backstage at the concert hall, her hands cold and shaking, her heart pounding so hard that she could feel it in her throat. The place was huge, far bigger than anything she had ever seen. Golden lights shone from the ceiling, the seats stretched far back into the darkness. And everywhere she looked, she saw people in fancy clothes waiting for the show to begin. It felt like another world, far away from the tiny apartment. The late-night shifts and the heavy trays she used to carry, she had come a long way. And yet standing there, dressed in a simple but elegant black gown, she still felt like the same girl who used to hide her talent. She looked down at her fingers. They looked different, now stronger, more sure, but the doubt still sat in her mind. Would they laugh at her again? Would she freeze up? What if the video had made her seem better than she actually was? Charles Langford came up behind her and put a hand on her shoulder. He wore a calm smile and spoke softly. "Are you nervous?" Gave a short laugh. "I'm terrified." He nodded. "Good. That means you care. Just remember, this isn't about being perfect. It's about being honest. Play like you did in that restaurant. Play like it's your story." She nodded, holding his words close. Outside, host of the event walked on stage and announced, "Our next performer is someone you may already know from a viral video that touched the hearts of millions. But tonight, she's not just a video, she's here, live, to share her gift with all of us. Please welcome Emily Carter." The crowd clapped, polite and curious. Most of them hadn't seen her in person. Some were likely wondering what was so special about a waitress. But as she stepped onto the stage, all the noise faded in her mind. The grand piano sat in the middle of the stage, shining under a single spotlight. She walked toward it slowly, each step echoing through the hall. She sat down on the bench and took a deep breath. Her dress rustled softly as she settled in. She placed her fingers on the keys and closed her eyes. Then she began to play. The song she chose was one she had written herself. It didn't have a name, wasn't full of technical tricks or fast finger movements. It was slow, emotional, and full of heart. It told a story. The opening notes were soft and gentle, like a memory. Then came sadness, with minor chords that pulled at the heart, then hope, then strength. It was music born from late nights, from silent tears, from years of sacrifice and silent dreams. The audience sat frozen. No one whispered, no one coughed. The music wrapped around them like a warm blanket. Some closed their eyes, some sat forward, holding their breath. The sound was not just beautiful, it was honest. It was pure. In the middle of the song, Emily thought of her father. She saw his smile, the way he used to sit on the couch with his eyes closed when she practiced. She thought of her mother, of Jamie, of every time she had played alone in the empty restaurant. And then she smiled through her tears, because she was no longer playing alone. She was being heard. When the final note faded into silence, there was a long pause. Then someone stood and clapped. Then another, and another. Then, seconds, the entire hall was on their feet, clapping wildly, shouting, cheering. Some had tears running down their faces. Emily stood up slowly, shocked. She looked around and saw that even the musicians backstage were applauding. It was real, all of it. They had loved it. She bowed deeply, her eyes glistening, and walked. Offstage to a shower of praise. Backstage, Charles hugged her. "You did it. You truly did it." The rest of the night was a blur. People came to her, shaking her hand, asking questions, offering interviews. Famous artists wanted to collaborate. Music schools wanted her to speak to their students. One man offered to help produce an album. But the biggest surprise came the next morning. Emily woke up to find her name on the front page of major newspapers. The headlines read, "Waitress to Wonder, Emily Carter wows the world, the girl who played her heart out, and piano story that changed everything." She couldn't believe it. Everything was happening so fast. Her phone buzzed again. This time it was a video call from Mrs. Benson, her old music teacher. When Emily picked up, the woman was already crying. "Oh, my dear," she said, her voice shaking. "I knew you had this in you. I'm so proud of you." Emily smiled. "You never stopped believing in me." "Neither should you," she replied. After the concert, people started recognizing Emily on the street. Some came up just to say thank you. One little girl handed her a folded note that said, "Because of you, I want to play piano too." That note made Emily cry more than anything else. She was invited to be on morning shows, podcasts, and even got asked to perform on a late-night talk show. Through all the excitement, she stayed grounded. She still cooked Jamie's dinner, still walked to the market, still wore her favorite old hoodie at home. One evening, Jamie came running to her, holding a letter. Look. It was from a major music school. They were offering her a full scholarship, no age limit, no conditions. They had seen her performance and wanted her to come and study there. Not just study, they wanted her to teach others too. To help young musicians find their voice, just like she had. Emily held the letter and sat quietly. All her life she had waited for someone to open a door like this. Now it was wide open. She turned to Jamie. "Should I go?" He grinned. "Yes, but only if I get to visit you every weekend." They laughed together. Life had changed, but their bond remained the same. Later that night, Emily sat at the old keyboard in their apartment and played softly. It wasn't the grand piano from the concert. It didn't have the perfect sound, but it was the one that had been there all along, the one that had held her music during the hardest years. She played for no one, for herself, because now she didn't need an audience to believe in her. She already believed in herself, and that changed everything. Emily stood backstage again, but this time everything was different. Her hands were no longer shaking. Her heart still beat fast, but not from fear this time. It was excitement. She looked calm and confident, dressed in a graceful white gown that moved like water when she walked. The grand stage in front of her was filled with thousands of people, and even more were watching on live television across the country. The lights were bright, the cameras were rolling, and the world was waiting. But Emily wasn't the same waitress who had been forced to play the piano to entertain a cruel man's party. She was now the guest of honor, the star of the night. The concert hall was decorated with elegance and love. It was a charity event called A Symphony of Hope, created to support young musicians who couldn't afford to follow their dreams. Emily had helped plan it with Charles Langford, and together they made sure that the focus would be on giving others a chance, just like Emily had once needed. The crowd was filled with people from all walks of life, rich, poor, famous, unknown. Some were there because of her viral video, others were music lovers. But most of them came to witness the story of a girl who had reminded the world that dreams don't die, they just wait in the audience. Jamie sat in the front row, dressed in a neat suit, his eyes glowing with pride. Had grown in the past few months, not just taller, but stronger. Emily had found him a good school and a kind tutor. He was doing better than ever. He waved at her from his seat, and she smiled back. Seeing his face gave her strength. The announcer stepped forward and spoke into the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, tonight we welcome someone who reminded us all what true talent, heart, and courage look like. Please give a warm welcome to the extraordinary Emily Carter." The audience clapped, cheered, and stood as Emily walked onto the stage. But she didn't rush. She took her time, walking with grace, her eyes calm, her face glowing with quiet strength. She bowed gently, then sat at the piano. The same kind of piano she had once touched in secret in the empty restaurant. Hoping no one would hear, she placed her hands on the keys. The room fell completely silent. She began to play. The piece she chose was special. It wasn't classical or famous. It was her own creation, a song she had written during her hardest days. She had called it the Waitress's Waltz. Melody started soft and gentle, like footsteps across a quiet floor. It carried the feeling of silent nights, of whispered dreams, of hope hidden behind tired eyes. Then it grew stronger, bolder, with each movement telling the story of a girl who refused to give up, who chose love over fame, who kept her music alive even when the world turned away. As the music flowed, the crowd leaned in closer, drawn into the emotion of every note. Some closed their eyes and swayed with the rhythm. Others watched her hands, amazed at how such power could come from someone so humble. Even the cameramen, trained to stay focused, found themselves lost in the sound. Halfway through the piece, something incredible happened. Behind her, a giant screen lit up with soft images, photos, and videos from Emily's journey. A clip of her playing the restaurant piano, a moment from the viral video. A shot of her walking with Jamie through the market. A video of her practicing alone in a dark studio. The crowd watched in silence, some with tears in their eyes. The story was real, and it was theirs too. When the final notes rang out, the room stayed still for a moment. Then the applause came, loud, thunderous, filled with emotion. People stood up, clapping with all their hearts. Some were crying, some were shouting her name, and many simply stood frozen, moved beyond words. Emily stood and bowed, her eyes shining with unshed tears. Backstage, Charles hugged her tightly. "You didn't just perform," he said. "Ain't you? Gave them a piece of your soul. That's why they love you." Over the next few days, her performance became the talk of the nation. News shows played clips from the concert. Radio stations talked about her story. Social media exploded again. But this time it wasn't just about a waitress who surprised the rich. It was about a woman who rose from nothing, who kept going when everything was against her, who proved that talent doesn't need money, only a chance. Offers came pouring in: albums, world tours, guest appearances. Big music schools offered her teaching jobs. Even movie studios asked if they could make a film about her life. It was overwhelming, but Emily took it all in calmly.
Oh.
She didn't forget who she was. She didn't forget where she came from. She accepted the offer to make an album, but said no to the film, at least for now. She wanted to focus on real music, on touching hearts. She also started a small foundation to support kids like her children with music in their hearts but no way to show it. She called it Jamie's Keys, named after her brother. The first project was to buy instruments for 10 schools across the country. It was a small start, but it meant everything to her. Despite all the fame, Emily never became proud or distant. She stayed grounded. She visited her old music academy and played for the students. She returned to her restaurant, not to work, but to thank the staff who had supported her quietly. She hugged Mr. Lee, the assistant manager who had once scolded her for touching the piano. He laughed and said, "Guess I owe you an apology." She laughed too. It wasn't bitter. It was peaceful. One evening, months later, she sat with Jamie on their apartment balcony. They had moved to a nicer place, but it still felt like home. The sky was full of stars, and a soft breeze passed between them. "You're not just a star now," Jamie said. "You're a whole galaxy." Emily laughed. "You're still the smartest one in the family." He leaned his head on her shoulder. "Do you miss being a waitress?" She smiled, thinking about it. Sometimes. Not the work, but the quiet. The feeling of being small, invisible. It taught me how to listen, how to feel, how to be patient. Jamie nodded. "And now?" "Now I'm learning how to be seen," she said softly. "How to help others be seen too." A few weeks later, Emily stood in front of a group of young children in a small classroom. They were nervous, shy, just like she had once been. She sat at the piano and played a short piece, then looked at them and said, "Music lives inside. You just have to let it out." A little girl raised her hand. "What if people laugh at me?" Emily leaned forward and smiled. "Then play louder." The room giggled, but her message was clear. Emily had found her voice, not just in music, but in life. She had lived through pain, silence, fear, and disappointment. But she had also discovered courage, love, and purpose. Her story wasn't just about music. It was about rising, again and again, no matter how low life pushed her. And even though the applause would one day fade, and the cameras would move on to someone else, Emily knew her music would stay, because real music doesn't need spotlights. It just needs truth, and she had that, more than ever. The waitress who once played for a laugh had become a legend because she never stopped believing in the sound of her own soul. And now, the world listened.